All right, all right, all right. I finally got on stage. They finally let me on. Uh, Thank you all so much for coming and listening to us talk about what in the world are NFTs, and particularly as we look to the future and think about NFTs, what they are, what they shouldn't be, how we can use them in meaningful, interesting ways. I'd like to get started though with maybe some rounds of introduction, thinking through who are you, what's your interest in NFTs. Maybe Fred, you can kick us off. Who are you? What's your interest in NFTs?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So I'm Fred, the founder of Lightmeet. Quick background, basically I started my career as C++ developer in the banking sector. And then my last position was a technical lead in for BGC Partners, so headquartered in London, a brokerage company. And then after, I guess I got a bit tired of this corporate world and decided to embrace my creative side and became indie game developer, basically. And that's where I guess I got exposed to all this problem with this over-centralized creative infrastructure. So for example, Envato back in 2014, we had, they were setting the price for us. So that's how centralized those infrastructures are. And then after, we also had to deal with locked payment rails, with all the problem with the siloed app stores. And so basically the first time I got in touch with NFTs, or the first very serious talk about this, I think it was in 2016 for Casual Connect in San Francisco. And basically here, we had a talk about monetized graph. So it was called Money Graph. And I think that was before even NFTs were coined as an acronym. And then from there, basically, that's where I decided to create Lightmeet. So that's the philosophy behind Lightmeet and the NFT marketplace.
Hi, I'm JL, and I'm a writer and an artist. And I got into NFTs to find a way to monetize my digital artwork and kind of cut out the middleman of gallerists and publishers, and trying to figure out a way to just do things on my own. You know, it's a lot easier to move as an individual than trying to get a bunch of managers and agents and all of these things kind of put together. I found NFTs about in March of 2021. I heard Grimes had sold some artwork for a ridiculous sum of money, and I was like, I want in. And the more I learned about royalties baked into contracts, it just sort of clicked with me that I could be getting a portion of the resales of my art forever. And that was really interesting, because currently in the physical art world, I sell my art to you, you make the profit when you sell it to someone else. So it's nice to have a little piece of that. I started minting on a platform called Foundation. And now I'm looking into Lightmeet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so that kind of brought me here to kind of explore that. I feel kind of out of the loop because I'm not a developer in this conference, but yeah, I'm enjoying making these connections.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm Tyler. I'm also involved in the NFT space. When I went on paternity leave a little while ago, I was always interested but very busy and wasn't able to explore NFTs, but heard that Lightning was a thing, and so I wanted to explore that. And oh my goodness, the community is so fantastic. I spend a lot of time around engineers who maybe aren't quite as creative. Spend a lot of time solving problems. So my interest often revolves around bringing in engineering and artwork. I have a background in photography, so I was doing a lot of kind of combining programming with artwork, whether it was generative art or just unique, interesting experiments. A lot of what interests me in NFTs is, I think the technology is amazing, but I feel like how it's applied is pretty crude, or it's not that interesting, or it's being misused in some ways. So I've used the analogy that I feel like, again, the technology is amazing. It's a car. It's this amazing piece of engineering, and everybody is pushing it. Right? They're getting into this vehicle, they're doing this amazing piece of software, and I just see these people pushing this car around like, have you tried turning the key? Because you could actually drive it. And so my interest in NFTs is, and really like software in general, is finding opportunities where there's something that I feel like is an amazing piece of technology that nobody's, like they're not using it right, trying to find opportunities to expose more interesting use cases. We're not pushing cars, we're actually driving them. So moving on from intros, NFTs obviously kind of became mainstream. Everybody knows the phrase, at least NFT. They may not know what it stands for, or even agree on what that standardization. But I would argue, like, does anybody know what Wi-Fi stands for? Like it's a title, it's a name. It doesn't really matter what it stands for necessarily, but it's how it's used. But with crypto winter and the interest in NFTs and kind of cutting out a lot of that cruft, everybody's like, okay, we are pushing a car. This is stupid. Let's go back to either what we were doing before, or really trying to figure out if this is meaningful at all. I'd like to shift the conversation to thinking through the hurdles that NFTs have to address, right? There's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of disinterest, a lot of distrust in NFTs. So when you think about the technology and its legitimate use cases and how it's going to survive, not just the next 1 year, 2 years, but 100 years, these buildings that we see, how do we get this thing to survive and actually be useful and solve problems and not always have this up and down with the market, but actually survive? Fred, I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I mean, so I think to me there are several points. The first one I would say is in terms of expectations. So NFTs is a technology for proof of ownership in decentralized environment, right? And it's just one component that can help us decentralize our own infrastructures. But I think people have very wrong expectations sometimes about it. They expect NFTs, for example, to solve copyright issues. That comes very often in discussions. It's like, what prevents someone from stealing my art? And I think the problem is that NFTs is not that technology that can help that, or not alone. What we need, basically, we need some kind of a process, some kind of a legal infrastructure that goes along with the NFTs in order to solve that. So, and we know basically that when we have over expectation or wrong expectation things, we can fall out of love with something or someone, and that's what basically the problem I see, the first problem I see with NFTs. The second problem I would say is about, and it's more for us builders, we need to be careful when we take shortcuts. So, for example, I can see a lot of, in French we have a saying, it's like, the word dog does not bark. And I see a lot of people putting their NFT in front of their business, but at the end they stay Web 2. They are still centralized, they are still doing custodial assets and things like that. And we need to be very careful about that. Another example is with lazy minting. So for example, on OpenSea, you can lazy mint, and that's a solution that allows people obviously to mint very cheaply. But the problem you do when you lazy mint is that you don't commit your art on the blockchain. So you don't have that stamp that can be the proof of you creating for the first time this NFT. And what happens is, what would happen if someone 5 years, 10 years down the line has actually minted your art while you were lazy minting? So you can enter some litigation and a lot of problems basically based on that. Royalties is another problem of shortcut. It's like on Ethereum, for example, you've got EIP 2981, I think, which is a standard that says royalty payments are optional. And the problem with this is that now that means marketplaces, it's at the goodwill of marketplaces whether royalties are paid. And I think there's not enough awareness on those shortcuts, and a lot of creators are very confident into going into this and then may encounter a lot of problems in the future. And the last point is, I think, about speculation that you were talking about, the crypto winter. We also, the market's crashing down by 99%. And so that's what speculation and reckless behavior do. And we need to be very aware of that. But I think also it's an opportunity for people to basically refocus and then open their eyes on what the technology actually really is.
I think that's a really interesting question about like what the hurdles are going to be for NFTs, because I mean, I'm not a developer, so I don't think of the things we can't do now. I just kind of think of it like creatively, like what could we do? And you're talking about copyright, and I'm very excited about that. I think I think NFTs could turn copyright completely on its head, because if an artwork is tied to a wallet, and that person is, say, anonymous, how do we know when they die? Like right now, IP goes into public domain 50 years after their death, but if you're an anonymous artist creating an NFT, well, you could live forever, right? So does that copyright stay with the wallet forever? And I think that's really interesting, that maybe my descendants, who I give my seed phrase to, my keys to when I pass, could continue to make the royalties off my artwork, and maybe that IP never goes into public domain. So I think that's really fascinating. And yeah, I think there are so many applications for that in the future.
Yeah. I do appreciate very much the perspective of let's not think about problems as much as we think about solutions. And that's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot with NFTs, really like in tech in general, that there seems to be this, let's just wait and see. Let's wait until this thing matures and some of the wrinkles get ironed out. And I kind of think that's ridiculous. Like there's pieces of it that do work. What are you waiting for? Like somebody's going to have to do this ironing out. Somebody's going to be making the decisions on what's a yes and what's a no, what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. Why in the world would you not be involved in those decisions, in the actual progression of technology? Like there isn't a time and space when something is like, all right, we're done. No more innovation, no more changes, no more improvements. The software is finished. The idea is done. Like there's always this progression of improvement, of changing something, of new ways to use it. And so if we're thinking about any sort of technology, I mean, this is kind of blockchain in general, like let's just wait and see what happens. Let's wait until the wrinkles get ironed out. Well, you're never going to use it, or you won't be part of the decision makers that decide how it's going to be used. And so there's this tremendous opportunity as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as artists and designers to be part of that story of how this is going to be used and what it's going to look like in 10 years. So rather than waiting and following somebody else's template, someone else's pattern, making a yes or a no decision for yourself, make it a yes for you by being a part of the actual invention of the thing itself. So it's less of, I don't like NFTs, and more, well, make it something that you do. Make it something that makes sense for your business. I mean, like Fred was saying, how it's more about ownership. It's not about art, it's about ownership and transfer and proof. Does that need to be with art? No, of course not. It can be with so many different things. So looking at it from a technological standpoint of how can I make use of this thing for me and improve it and push innovation that's favorable towards me, well, then you can use it and you're not waiting. So I appreciate that perspective very much, that it's what can you do with it? What could you tweak or change slightly that would improve the usage for you, and viewing it in terms of like the future that you want to see rather than the future that you're afraid of. So what's next? And let's take like a little bit of a, let's not take an industry, but let's make it a little bit personal. Like what's next for you with NFTs?
So I'm currently working on a screenplay. I'm writing my first movie, and I know when I finish it, I have to register with the Screenwriters Guild, and then I have to get it sort of like copyrighted before any of these studios are even gonna try to buy it or bid on it. And I was just thinking that if I could mint it and it would be the standard of like creator, like content, like if Universal saw my minted script and said, yes, that's the same thing as her saying she owns it, she does, then they could just bid on it like an auction, like any other artwork, and it could cut out the fees of the middleman for that. So I'm interested in that, but I'm not sure exactly how we get there, so that like Universal and Disney would be like, yeah, a minted script is the same thing as a copyrighted one with the screenwriters. And yeah, so kind of thinking about how you can link your wallet with identity got me thinking like maybe in the future people aren't given social security numbers at birth, they're given wallet addresses, and kind of like how that would become your identity and how you maybe even pay your taxes, right? Like from your government issued wallet. That's kind of where I'm thinking of the future.
That's terrifying. But who knows? Yeah. Fred?
Yeah, I mean, to me, cutting the middleman, that's exactly the thing. Basically, I mean, with Lightmint, the goal, as I was saying, is to make the world a little bit fairer, especially for artists, independent creators. And then basically what I see is that there's so much friction for independent creators and artists, and that technology is definitely helping us to achieve that. With NFT, I think what we can do is exactly this, to achieve some, what I would say, ubiquity of monetization, which is like you're not just stuck to a few options in order to monetize your creations, basically. So for example, with NFTs, we can speed things up, we can cut the middleman, we can remove the friction, and with decentralized proof of ownership, that's exactly the purpose, basically. So yeah, that's the first a point I would say that is the most important thing on Lightmeet, and that's why we don't intermediate any trade, we don't take any commission, so there's zero commission, and I think that's from the philosophy where I come from, that we really want to stick with this. So Lightmeet is going to stay a software platform that does not intermediate or middleman any financial transaction with from the art. Also, what I think is that it's a bit unfair because an artist like you, for example, you've perfectioned your art for many years. We were not there as a marketplace taking the risk with you. So why should we share a percentage of your success? So that's what I think. I think with NFTs technology, we can really bring a lot more fairness in this world where we are not middleman, and especially financial middleman in those transactions. And another opening, I would say, for Lightmeet, what's next is with permanence and immutability that now we have with the blockchain, then we can definitely build a metaverse. And I think there's a lot of opportunities in that sector for NFTs.
Can you speak a little bit to like identity and how that needs to be tied to artwork? Like what I think one of my main concerns when I think particularly about like industries that are really, really well established with, you know, lawyers and copyright laws and things that can come after you. Like the way that those things are protected is, particularly in the NFT space, is there has to be some sort of proof that you actually definitely do own this. So there's like there's a part of this that's the identity piece of proof of ownership before you prove like, okay, yes, you own an NFT. But who's to say the original minter of the NFT you own had any right to put that piece of art online? Maybe Fred, you can speak to how you're dealing with that from a platform perspective, and then JL from your perspective of what it should look like.
Yeah, I mean, basically that's what I was saying at the beginning. I don't think NFTs, I think it's in terms of expectation, NFTs are a proof of ownership in decentralized environment, but definitely, yes, we have this problem with tying up identities to those proof of ownership. It does not mean that we are the copyright owner, we are the creators. And on Lightmeet, for example, we have a KYC process, so artists can go through this KYC process. It's not perfect, but I think over time the industry is also going to learn, and then we are going to, like you said, basically in Web 2, there's a lot of improvement that happened, and I think in Web 3 or NFT world, it's going to happen as well.
So I think the biggest hurdle with the copywriting, like you said, how do you know did this artist even own the rights to this artwork they minted? I mean, everything's timestamped on blockchain, right? So whoever minted it first obviously can't be a lazy mint like you were talking. It needs to be a committed mint. But whoever minted first, I mean, that's who owns it. That's what happens right now with patents, right? You could make the exact same or steal the plans from somebody else's invention, but if you patent it first, it's yours. So it's kind of the same thing with blockchain. If I mint it first, it's mine. And the way that you keep other people from minting it, well, that's AI, right? An elegant solution says this image, this writing, this content, it's already been made, and it's already been made before. You can't even mint it. You would, in my utopia, you wouldn't even be able to steal it from someone because it would be preventable, because it's like, no, you don't own this, it's already here. Kind of like Google image search, to be like, hey, well, you can't mint this because, you know, they did and it's not yours.
She opened the AI Pandora's box. This is also something I've been thinking about a lot, AI, and this idea of artwork getting created through either generative art or using algorithms to create things. And this, I don't know, I've been very impressed that we live in a world where everything's like a clone or a copy of itself. Like what do you own that's unique, that's just yours? Like you buy a light bulb, the same light bulbs all over your house. You buy a bed, somebody else has that bed. You even buy a house, somebody else probably has the plans to your house. We've grown up in a world that's just filled with clones. Everything is a copy of itself. And it allows us to have a lot of shared experiences. We have a lot of commonality, right? We all watch the same TV shows and know the same celebrities. But in a world with AI, right, I can give it the same prompt. We can all write the same like phrase, and it'll generate a completely unique piece of art. So it's using machine code to create uniqueness. And that's actually really interesting. I mean, it's also terrifying when you think about ads, and now there can be like there's no shared experiences, and now we're all looking at things that are completely catered to who we are as people, and that has a lot of power and a lot of danger. But is that particular piece of it, like where the merging together of machine and now a kind of uniqueness, where like really the only pieces of things that I own that are unique to me are like the drawings that my kid did. And we value them not necessarily because they're unique, but because like my child drew them. But we're about to enter this new world where everything, right? You merge AI with 3D printing, and now each of us can own completely unique things. And you start to introduce blockchain to that, and you've got this immutable, long-term, these things can be tied to our identity. You can carry that all across the metaverse. I mean, it's a very interesting world. And that's one of the reasons that I think this talk is important, is less about like, how can I use NFTs, and more, this is opening up, right? We've got generative art. It's no accident that one of the main uses of NFTs is generative art. It's taking AI and putting it on chain. There's something to that. So we need to be very careful when we sort of shrug this aside and stick with some sort of old world, that we're about to be introduced into a world that's really, really, really different to the one that we've been living in for ever since factories were invented.
I wanted to touch a little bit on what you said about how AI generates uniqueness, because as an artist, I think I can't, like, have I ever had a completely unique idea as an artist? Because we are association machines. Every artwork I make is based on my life and my experience and other artists that influenced me. Well, AI is the same. AI doesn't know anything that we don't know. It just knows all the things that we know. And so, they're all unique, but they're also all derivative. It can't make anything that's completely unique because it has to come from ideas that already existed.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm going to bounce on this because I really love this idea. The thing is, I think first the line is going to blur between what's real and what's digital, because the thing is, with permanence and immutability that we have now with the metaverse, then we are building those worlds that are basically as consistent as the real world that we know. But the thing on this creativity, intuitiveness, I think it has already been questioned. I was watching this documentary. It's AlphaGo DeepMind. So the Google engineer, basically, they went after the challenge of creating an AI that can solve the game of Go. And it was very famous that AI was not able to solve this game. Why? Because there's more Go board configuration than there is atom in the universe, basically. And then an expert system AI would have been not possible to solve this problem. So what they did, they created an AI that was approaching this problem the same way a player of Go was approaching it, with intuitivity. Sorry. And basically what happened there is that this AI was actually very successful, managed to beat one of I think it's considered as the best Go player ever, Isedol. So he's a Korean player, and basically he was beaten 4 times out of 5 by this AI. But what's very interesting out of this is that the next iteration of that AI, AlphaGo 0, has been only trained by AI and never interacted with any human. And now he's able to beat AlphaGo all the time. And Isedol actually had a very good reflection at the end of this documentary. He said, basically, maybe what we call intuitivity, what we call creativity, is just our own limitation. And everything could be predicted, basically, by a superior intelligence. And that's maybe where, how AI is going to open up our mind and make us realize who we are. And maybe creativity, what we call creativity, is actually is the limitation that we have as human beings. So, big opening, because obviously we can mix up all this with the permanence, the immutability, NFTs, the metaverse, and all this, and it can, there's opportunities there, obviously, but there's also this, a lot of unknown as well.
I think as an artist, it scares me to hear that you can teach AI creativity or intuition. But I get what you're saying, that like my perception of my creativity is probably just based on the limitations that I have. But I think where we're going to see human and AI not being the same is that AI's never had a birthday. Right? AI's never fallen in love. AI doesn't know what my mom smells like. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are the things that make our life unique. These are the things that are going to shade my art that can't shade anybody else's. And that can't be AI. I mean, they could read my journal and maybe spit out a couple pages that sound like me, but they don't have that emotional connection. And I think you're still going to be able to read that when you look at an artist's painting or writing, or even a human and AI collaboration. Because the AI by itself isn't going to have that personal touch, but that may just me being optimistic or hopeful that I won't be out of a job.
Maybe so, but I do think, like, for me, the takeaway is keep your eyes open. Don't let this stuff catch you by surprise. Like this conference, you guys know engineers. You are engineers. You're builders. You're entrepreneurs. Don't let these things take you by surprise. Be part of the story that invents how these things are used and what they're used for, so that hopefully they're used for good, to improve people's lives and solve problems and not to create them. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to open it up, though, for you to just take a moment to pitch whatever it is that you're working on, where you would like people to go to find you, keep up with you, and collaborate with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so Lightmint NFT marketplace, you can reach it at lightmint.com. We are also very active on Twitter, especially if you're an artist. I think being active on Twitter is very useful. And then we are going to London, NFT London, next month. So if you're also around there, then you can come and see us. And we'll definitely go, we can work out some featuring with artists. So.
You can read my writing on jlmaxey.mirror.xyz. I do a bunch of blog articles, interviews on different artists in the metaverse. I've also started minting my novel. And then you can find my visual art on foundation.app, and that's jlmaxey as well. So.
All right, fantastic. And I'm also, I tweet. I'm a tweeter. So you can follow me there. Thanks so much. If you guys have questions, make sure to stick around. We're out of time for the stage, so make sure to walk up and talk with our brilliant panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.